Welcome, everyone. I'm Dan Powers, Executive Director of the Society for Science and User Research Facilities, and I'm happy to be starting another session during our 2021 annual meeting. This is going to be a great one with some really good ideas. The title is Telling Your Story, Multimedia Best Practices, and the three women who are going to be on this call that I've spoken with and know some of the backstory of what they're going to be describing is going to keep you very interested for the next 50 minutes here. We'll first hear from Massie Ballon, the Senior Communications and Outreach Specialist at the Joint Genome Institute at Berkeley Lab. Then Cara Laasch, the Science Communication Manager at the National Synchrotron Light Source II and the Laboratory for BioMolecular Structures at Brookhaven National Laboratory. And then Amanda Killingsworth. She's the Creative Services Projects Coordinator at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So many good examples and ideas are about to be discussed. With this panel getting started, I'm just looking at the screen who's here. Massie, you are going to go first. I'll ask you to join us on screen and you can share what you would like.
Great, thanks, Dan. Give me just a second to make sure that
Great picture behind you there. Of course.
Alrighty. I think we're good. Just give me a thumbs up if you're looking at the right screen. So it's a good thing to check.
Yes, and I'll also mention to the audience in the upper right corner of your Zoom window, there's a little icon that says View. So during the presentation, if you click speaker view, that should actually help ensure that you get the person talking as the main image and or their slides like Massie has just put up now. Okay, Massie, over to you. I'll step back.
All right, well, thanks, Dan, for the opportunity to be here. And hello, everyone. My name is Massie Ballon, and I'd like to start by reminding you of where I work. So the JGI was established 25 years ago from the resources and expertise at Berkeley, Livermore, and Los Alamos National Laboratories. In 2004, after we completed our role in sequencing approximately 11% of the human genome, we became a national user facility. And in 2020, we had just over 2,000 active users. In late 2019, we moved from our Walnut Creek campus to the newly built Integrative Genomics building at Berkeley Lab, just right behind me, in which you can see on the left of the screen, where we're co-located with the DOE Systems Biology Knowledge Base, or K-Base, which you heard about from Alicia Wood-Charlson yesterday, and the National Microbiome Data Collaborative, or NMDC. We got to enjoy that new building smell until early March 2020, and since then, most of our workforce has been working remotely. So knowing who we are, what exactly does our team do? Well, we develop stories and content to raise awareness about the JGI and the expertise and capabilities available to researchers. We do so by highlighting achievements enabled by our resources, and don't take our word for it, we like to let our partners do the talking. So one of our approaches is to develop content that makes our partners and us, by extension, look good. Our team produces stories that highlight accomplishments enabled by JGI to a diversity of audiences, including DOE program managers, current and prospective users, and I should mention we're developing partnerships with minority serving institutions based on our flagship internship program with UC Merced, elected officials, and the science avid public. So to reach such a diverse group, we use a variety of vehicles, including email newsletters, annual progress reports, news releases and science highlights, and social media. And this is the moment where I'm supposed to plug. Please follow us. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And of course, multimedia. We use videos and our podcasts, Genome Insider and Natural Podcast. So to deliver that variety of products, we have a team with a wide array of skills. We're a team of 4 generating content that is made accessible through our website, managed by Layla. And you've probably noticed one phrase that is key to our team's success. And that is that Ashley, Allison, and I are all communicators who can produce stories for web and multimedia, which means we can and have concurrently worked on media assignments. So let's talk a little bit about how we've used that multimedia in the stories that we share. And here's an example of how we've used multiple formats for a single paper. So right after Thanksgiving of last year, our team learned of an upcoming Nature paper that involved switchgrass common gardens in 10 states and led to a high-quality reference genome. That journal article has been accessed 17,000 times to date. So with this lead time, we took a collaborative approach to amplification. We reached out to communicators at the University of Texas at Austin, Michigan State University, Washington State University, University of Georgia, the Hudson Alpha Institute for Biotechnology, and all 4 bioenergy research centers. So JGI developed the release and the multimedia. I did the release, and I also worked on the 2 videos, and Allison produced the podcast. And what you saw is that we shared the materials with all the partners for their use, which they amplified on social media. And all in all, about 260 Twitter accounts spread the word, and 20 news outlets picked up the story. So here's how all of those products helped that story on our website during that first month after that release went out. What you'll see here is there's a lot of interest in the news release when the paper came out, and then there's renewed interest when the podcast dropped, and then even more spikes in succeeding weeks for the news release when the videos dropped. So the videos and the podcast are linked to and embedded in the news release on our site, so people can access all the media, and the videos and the podcast each link back to the news release as well. So let's take a few minutes here to talk about why we added the podcast as a multimedia option. Our communications manager, David Gilbert, had been interested in developing a JGI podcast because they're a great way to reach new and busy audiences. For example, people listen to stories on their commutes. And this image on the left was drawn pre-pandemic, so the writer has no mask, or while they're doing chores around the house. And these aren't just stories aimed at the general public. Researchers who may not have heard of us may find in these stories opportunities to collaborate. So our path to podcasting began with a JGI computational biologist. That's Dan Yudwari, and he had expressed an interest in doing a podcast that would be more of a fireside style chat with researchers in the niche field of secondary metabolism. He saw an opportunity to build community within this, and the numbers bear that out, as you'll see later. So when Allison joined our team, we sent them both to a podcast bootcamp. And over the next few months, Allison and Dan developed their podcasts in parallel, each with a distinct style. So Dan's natural podcast is minimally edited, while Allison's Genome Insider is more heavily produced, with a story developed based on the interviews. They individually edit their podcasts with editorial feedback from the rest of us, and Allison also serves as a co-host on Dan's podcast, representing the listeners new to the science of secondary metabolism. So both of these podcasts launched in March 2020 before what would have been our annual meeting, and right before we transitioned to working remotely during the pandemic. The podcasts allow us to connect to the audiences and connect them directly to the researchers. And we've done a number of stories highlighting collaborations with the researchers at various institutions, as you can see here. We've also taken advantage of some opportune pre-pandemic moments. For example, the first 6 episodes of Natural Podcast, including one featuring Ben Shen of Scripps Research Institute, who you'll see up at the top left corner, were recorded at the Society for the Industrial Microbiology and Biotechnology Conference. And we reached out in advance to arrange interviews and also for an interview space. And on the bottom left, that's Allison interviewing Kelly Wrighton at Colorado State University. We were attending a conference at the university, and we got to do a field trip that led to a river microbiomes episode. So we've built interest with each episode of our podcast, and we hope you've had a chance to listen to at least one, if not both of them. And if not, now is a really good time to start. So using the stats from our podcast hosting and distribution service Buzzsprout, you can see here that people are listening through a variety of services. And what I want to highlight here is that we have a number of people who are listening to the episode on our website, since we embed the episodes in the transcripts. So when we promote these episodes on social media, we drive people to our website. And that brings up another point. The challenge with promoting a podcast is that the social media is visual. And as you can see, the tweet on the left has an engaging quote, but it doesn't fare as well as the tweet on the right that had an embedded teaser video. So we've been experimenting with teasers ever since we launched the podcasts, and they may be playing right now as you'd see them on Twitter with sound off. The two you see here were done using an online service that combines sound bites from the podcast with images we sourced from our collaborators or elsewhere. And I think I've got a few seconds, so I'm going to play one of them out loud.
Chromosomes are there only 3 chromosomes? Is that
No, there's 13.
there's 13? But
Yeah.
do you mean that they're just really big?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Oh yeah, they're the biggest chromosome in both males and females.
So, and let me have Nigel take the
Synthetic
stage.
biology, like metabolomics, like some of the more sort of, directed genomics approaches, DAP-seq, and the stable isotope probing work that we're doing, single cell work we're doing, and using these together along with all of our computational tools to really build out much more of an integrative genomics approach to studying environments, to studying organisms, to looking at pathways, and to looking at the interactions of organisms and environments.
Mm-hmm. And where do you see secondary metabolism falling into that?
Secondary metabolism fits everywhere.
I mean, it kind of does. Yeah.
So to conclude, here are a few things that have worked well for us when it comes to producing multimedia. Start by assembling a multi-skilled team who can produce multiple types of content. We always ask for images and videos. We try to be strategic in aligning the message to our brand. For example, we strategize the video and podcast interview questions. And for Genome Insider, we do short pre-interviews to define the story we want to tell and eliminate any tangents during the interview itself. Be agile, know what you have. For example, we record talks at weekly seminars so that when we hear of an upcoming paper, we can check if those videos can be publicly shared to complement the story. Clarify your resources. What's your production time? Who's available? What do you have on hand to build the multimedia story? Identify the partners who can amplify the stories that you tell. And once the story is out, find ways to revisit the content through national days, anniversaries of the sequence of the paper, etc. And finally, underlying everything I've said, earning the trust and support of your leadership and your partners is foundational. Without leadership support, we wouldn't have been able to build this team to get the resources we need. And without our partners, we wouldn't have the engaging guests and the materials to develop these stories. So with that, thanks for your time.
All right. Awesome, Massie. Thank you. I do love those podcasts. Got to learn a whole bunch more about Nigel Mounsey's background in his entrepreneurship and all before coming to JGI and the most recent podcast. Okay, over to Cara. Please join us on screen. Hello. Thank you for making some time today.
Not a problem. Nice to see you again, Dan.
Yes, well, please join or put your content up on screen, whatever you would like to share. The floor is yours.
So, I also made a few slides, but I was there are really just a few slides. So, I want to talk about, hi everyone, my name is Cara Laasch. I'm from the National Synchrotron Light Source 2 and the Laboratory for BioMolecular Structures at Brookhaven National Lab. Also, the NSLS-II is at the lab. You can see it here nicely in the picture. The NSLS-II is the big donut-shaped building in the lower corner to the right, the silver one, which is bluish in this one, but yeah. So I want to talk to you a little bit about virtual engagement, specifically tours and days of open house, since we can't really have people at the facilities that we serve. So NSLS-II is a synchrotron light source. So we have a huge floor full of experiments that we want to show to people. And we have a lot of different audiences. That means we need to engage with researchers who come to us to use our different facilities and experiments, but also we want to show those to the public, to our stakeholders, to people who just live on Long Island, and who kind of want to know what the National Lab is doing there. And this is basically what I'm trying to speak about today. So I want to start specifically with our Summer Sunday. NSLS-II Summer Sundays are a tradition that we have for years. It's usually one Sunday a year where we invite the public to come and see what we're doing. It used to be in person until COVID. which meant we had to go virtual, which we did 2020, but also 2021. And I would like to speak about the 2021 Summer Sunday specifically. Our format was we had one live interactive session where people could send questions through the different social media channels that we streamed it at, which included Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. So people could just write directly in those chats their questions to us and we would answer them. We planned for 3 Beamline tours and we had short interviews with the different Beamline scientists. So in the picture, you can see our director and the head of our UEC, our User Executive Committee. The two of them basically, just like talk show hosts, are speaking to one of the scientists who gave a brief tour. So, and what we basically did, we had them being the talk show host, we cut in the video of the pre-recorded tour, and then we had him come live to them, speak about what the audience just heard at that very brief pre-recorded tour, and could also send directly questions to that scientist. And then he went off stage and we introduced the next Beamline. So that was the format we used. And while we explored that format, here are the things to keep in mind. I mean, this should be a best practice session. So let me get right directly to the meat of the points here. So first of all, live questions means you have to make sure that your audience is aware of that their questions actually reach the people. And you had seen both John and Matt, so our director and our chair of the UEC, both had a laptop and a computer because whenever they asked a question, they could look down and actually pick them. Yes, we selected those questions from the backend and sent them up to them. So to help the process so that they don't need to scroll through the Facebook chat or the Twitter feed. But we really made sure that we included the name of the person who was asking the question and from where the question came so that the audience that was listening through whatever medium they did knew that the questions we were asking the scientists were actually their questions. We also were active in the chat. So if there were short questions like, what is NSLS-II? We directly answered that one in the chat instead of sending it up to the live audience. One of the things, since this was our Summer Sunday, we had to keep in mind that our online audience is not the same as our live audience. Summer Sundays are usually designed for children. So we usually have a lot of activities and other things going on, and the tours are really brief. Our online audience is usually a little bit more sophisticated and wants to know more detail. So we need to make sure that the people we're interviewing or that the video or that the content meets their expectation. Otherwise they get bored. Usually it takes a little bit of a run up to get live interaction on chats. So have a few prepared questions that you already have a conversation going and people can jump in through the chat to start being engaged. For the Beamline videos that we took, we learned that writing a script actually makes a lot of sense. That helps the researchers to know what to expect, but also helps the videographer to ensure that they are taking the best angles. And since we wanted these tours to seem as live as possible, we wanted to film them in one take. The tours are about 3 minutes long, which also having a script makes also sure that all your messages are in there. But when you write a script, make sure that your scientists know that they don't need to read it. This is really just to help them focus on the main messages. They're not actors. They're not supposed to learn this. This should still be them and should be still their words. So the script really just shows them what is the main goal, where to go, and what do you actually want to communicate. Because if they know, they can really work well with that. So we had really good interactions with our scientists on that sense. Of course, you will need more people than you expect. Because behind the scenes, even if you only see 4 or 5 people in the video total, there's a videographer, there's someone here, someone needs to check the chat room. So you need more people than you'll think if you want to do something like that. Be sure to plan that in. And of course, check your tech in advance, but that should be a given in the current world we're living in right now. So that's the brief lessons learned from the Summer Sunday, which we also then took to giving tours. So when we do tours, we want to show our instrumentation, We want to create a connection with whomever we're showing them to. We want to open the door for engagement. So we want to invite questions, we want to invite follow-ups, we want to be open and really feel that people are interested in what we're doing. And of course, we want to educate people about the facility of what we're doing. So this has been what we've done for tours in the past, and this has always been the goals for them. Most importantly, we have very different audiences for tours. We do tours with elected officials. We do tours with industrial researchers. We do tours with scientists. We do tours with high school students. So there's a really broad bandwidth of people that come to see the facility. So it's pretty clear that one size does not fit all in this case, because each of these audiences have different needs and they want to see different things. So what we've done for moving into the virtual realm for tours is to keep them shorter. A usual NSLS-II tour used to last an hour when we did 3 beamlines plus a little bit. I'm walking here, but it's okay because you're just walking around, you're seeing one step, then you have a little break, everyone can take a breather before you go into talking about the next topic. But if you do it on a screen, everyone has to focus all the time on the screen. So having it run an hour can be exhausting, just like all meetings on a screen. So we've really focused it down to doing shorter tours, really picking the pieces that are really important. The other thing is, if you do a virtual tour, you have to do everything slower. You have to speak a little bit slower, and you have to move your camera a little bit slower because there's lag. We all need to follow it. And in general, people are more nervous when you point a camera at them. So they'll speed up automatically. It's just a given that we've seen with most of our researchers. We also realized that you need to check more with your audience how they're doing if they have questions. So basically, when you're giving a tour and you stand in front of something and you point it at, you can see a live audience right there in front of you. So you can gauge whether you need to take a break and ask if someone has a question, but you can't do that with a virtual audience that you don't see. So basically, whenever you show something, you should take a break to give people the opportunity to engage, because engagement is one of the things we really want with these things. The other thing we figured out is if you do tours and you're walking from stop to stop, switch off the camera, because people get vertigo from the moving around, especially if you think, okay, the important part is over, so I can just quickly turn around and start moving if you're the camera person. But that movement is on the screen and people feel really bad when they see that. At least that was one of the comments that we get, which brought us to prepare for entertainment. If you're doing tours where you have to walk in between. So for this type of thing, we did that for a research workshop. We had 3 beamline tours. 2 beamlines were very close to each other, and the third one was a little walk away. The walk was about 10 minutes around the facility. Just as a reminder, NSLS-II, the building, has a half a mile long walkway, so things are a little bit far. So what we did there, we switched off the video and we prepared a little quiz where we just used the Zoom poll function to ask questions and had a little bit of a trivia quiz along the way from one stop to the other to keep the audience engaged. And that tour had really good results because everyone who started that tour at the beginning of the 45 minutes that we did was still there at the end and participated in the quiz. So that was pretty great. So yeah, and again here, make sure that you have enough people. So what we usually did, we have one person who handles the camera and one person who is the tour guide to show the things. And they're both connected to the same Zoom room to ensure that we get a clear picture of someone showing things, but you can also hear the tour person so that you don't have that weird hand where someone is filming or pointing, but I assume most people don't do that anymore. So yeah, those are my rough and short lessons learned. Here are a couple of links. You can watch the replay from our Summer Sunday on our YouTube channel. You can also go to the NSLS-II website. There are my contact details. So that's basically all I have. Thank you.
Basically, all you have. That was tremendous. Between what Massie and Cara have described so far, I think there's 2 pages of notes now for anyone involved in communications to consider. Thank you, Cara. We'll get back to, I think, a couple questions on what you just described after we hear from Amanda. So Amanda,
Perfect.
now let's turn to you. Welcome. Hello.
Hello. I think there's
I'm
a
glad you-
theme here, virtual.
Yes. That's notwithstanding, I know in the last session I was saying to our newer board members, we will be meeting in 2022 in person.
Yeah.
But this hybrid will be the new way. And so as you and I discussed before, let's hear what's going on at ORNL with some of the virtual and digital communications.
Sounds good. Can I share my screen? Let's see.
Yes. Do you have?
Let's see.
Yep, you're up on there.
Okay. Can you see Oak Ridge National Lab Virtual Tours project?
We do.
Okay. Sounds good.
Right,
Well, first of
you're
all,
on.
thank you for having me join you today to talk about our Virtual Tours project here at Oak Ridge National Lab. We are located, if you don't know a lot about ORNL, we're located here in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. We have about 6,000 staff and about 3,200 users and visiting scientists each year. We were established in 1943 as part of the Manhattan Project. My name is Amanda Killingsworth, and I'm project coordinator for our creative services group here. I've been at ORNL for about 2 years. In fact, I was only on site as a new employee for about 3 months before the pandemic hit and then sent us all home to work remote. So here in creative services, we encompass 4 teams. Photo, video, and reproduction is one team. Graphics, science communications, and technical communications. We're basically a full service agency for the entire lab, and we support the lab and its various facilities for any multimedia needs for their research. So this is a look at the aerial view. This was actually taken yesterday by one of the guys on our drone team. And so I really put this in here so that you guys can see how vast and large our area here is at Oak Ridge. This actually doesn't even show a couple of other campuses that we have where some of our user facilities are located. So why virtual tours? Well, each year ORNL hosts approximately 10,000 visitors to the lab, and many of them go on tours of one or more of our world-renowned facilities. At the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, it was clear that we would have to temporarily discontinue our on-site in-person tours. So if visitors couldn't come to the lab, then we would have to figure out a way to bring them to the lab. We had various needs to display our facilities, including requests for sponsor reviews, which actually began with a request to visit our manufacturing facilities. We also had needed public-facing tours. We also have an educational and community engagement team. They have what we call science trailers. There's 4 of them, and they go out to the community, various K through 12 students, and teach them about science. And so since we couldn't do those in-person experiences with students, then we needed some way to do them virtually and still teach STEM activities to the students. We also had a big HR campaign called ORNL Reimagined. And so HR was doing a lot of recruiting. And in fact, we actually recruited and hired many employees that onboarded virtually. They had never even been to our lab facilities on campus at all. So the virtual tours was really helpful across the board. You know, for all sorts of departments and all sorts of needs. Our creative services group wanted to really create a 3D immersive experience for our users and visitors to make them feel like they were on the tour in person. So how do we do this? We bought a Matterport 3D camera. We learned the new technology and then went to work capturing actual footage and developing engaging and historical content to create each virtual tour. We worked with each facility's subject matter experts and our communication coordinators to survey the space prior to scanning the areas. Then we created and crafted content for what Matterport calls matter tags, and I'll show you an example of those here in a minute, after the space images were stitched together. And then we worked with our export control and cybersecurity groups to vet our models for public release so that we didn't release anything that was sensitive in nature. We actually do have some private models that are not out there on public, but for the public to see, but those are really for sponsor and internal use. Our first virtual tours model was launched in August of 2020. So that was a little over a year ago, with our manufacturing facilities leading the way. That was for carbon fiber, a building technologies research facility, manufacturing demonstration facility, and the National Transportation Research Center. So how many do we have? We have about 15 models so far available to the public. Like I mentioned, we do have a few private models as well. We have several others, including the 4 models of our science trailers that are used for educational purposes that I mentioned before. So where are these located? I will go back to these so you guys can see, because I think that the picture does really tells us 1,000 words. But so on ornl.gov, we have an interactive campus map that is multidimensional and multi-layered. We also launched a dedicated virtual tour page this past June that is linked from that homepage at ornl.gov, with dedicated links straight from that homepage to the various tours that take you through. We also marketed them in different ways, including internal and external marketing. We used what we call the internal newsletter here at the lab is called ORNL Today. So we created some ORNL Today articles so that we could broadcast that out to our employee base. We were in constant communications with our human resources, space planning, and resource groups for new hires and new employee orientation. We used word of mouth advertising. We also, several of us here in Creative Services, use this ORNL dedicated virtual link on our email signatures. We used various internal communications coordinators for each of facilities to spread the word throughout their areas. And then some facilities that we worked with, like Neutron Sciences, actually posted their related tours in their own employee newsletter. They were just as excited about it as we were. And then we worked with our media relations team to push these out via social media as well, platforms. This is an example of Neutron Sciences newsletter, and you can see in the where the red arrow is how they marketed their particular tours, virtual tours. This is the internal site for employees. You'll see on the top left, ORNL virtual tours. That link was clickable, and then it went to an article to talk about all of the tours that we had launched to let employees know. This is a quick little video about, this was on the computing facility, actually posted this on their Facebook page last year. And then our virtual tours photographer created this quick video so that we could gain visual interest on social media in an already visually cluttered environment. Okay. We also used other communications and marketing tools. We had tip sheets that taught customers how to prepare their spaces for scanning. There are little nuances that you have to follow with this particular camera. It sees everything. So anything that's sensitive, passwords or things on whiteboards or whatever that we didn't want photographed, anything that needed to be covered up, we would cover up with sheets. We had to clean up the labs and all that stuff. So that type of prep work had to be done. We had a creative brief that we would send out to customers, and that would ask questions about contact information or on-site spaces, more information. We also had a Microsoft Office inbox that was specifically for 360 or virtual reality requests. And we are currently in the process of creating a creative services intake tool that will encompass all requests for all products and services that we offer. And in one of those tabs, it includes virtual tours, virtual tour request. So our results since August of 2020, over a year ago, we have had over 35,000 visits and 83,000 impressions. Our most popular tour to date is the High Performance Computing Facility Summit, our Summit Supercomputer. It has had over 14,000 visitors, 10,000 unique visitors, and 19,000 impressions. We also have other popular tours like the Graphite Reactor, REDC, SNS, CNMS, and then BTRIC, NTRC, MDF, and CFTF are our manufacturing facilities. Okay, and I want to show you now real-time example. So this is ornl.gov. Right here under About Us, this is what the dedicated page that we have, virtual tour. So it takes you directly, and this is all public, takes you directly to our dedicated page, and you can visit, learn a little bit about each tour, and then go visit each one of these spaces. And then includes our science fair, traveling science trailers. Let's see here. This is also our interactive map, and you'll find that on the page here, About Us, and under interactive map. This is sort of where we started from. We started on this interactive map, and here we have all the various facilities listed by campus. We have, where parking is located and all of that. But we added this virtual tours section here. And I'll just take you through the aquatics ecology lab. It's a pretty interesting model here, but you'll see the dollhouse view when you start. And then it kind of walks you through everything. These right here that pop up, the black boxes, those are the matter tags that we worked with subject matter experts and our science writers to craft. But you can either walk through these spaces yourself manually, or you can have it play for you. And this is called a highlight reel at the bottom. So it just takes you through. When there are multiple spaces, there's you can view floor plan. I could take you through the HIFER one. Right here is where the this is Neutron Sciences, so they have it little sections up here listed. But so HIFER has 2 levels. Here we go. And you can jump from various floors. So I'm on the first floor and I can go straight to the second floor, and it takes me up to the second floor. Again, you can view the dollhouse. You can click through anywhere. On the matter tags, you can add video. We can actually add images, graphs. We can connect it to YouTube, where a lot of our videos are. There's also a button for Matterport, where you can actually get those 3D glasses. I think they have them on Amazon for like $20 or something, but you can actually view this in real-time VR. And I think that's about it. I mean, there's lots and lots of stuff to explore here. So if you guys are interested, just go to ornl.gov and go to the About Us section, and you can go through pretty much any of these tours yourself at your leisure. So I welcome any questions that you guys may have, and thank you for your time.
Okay, I'm back on. Thanks, Amanda. That's compelling. There's so much there. I will look to the chat in a moment, but first, when we have a panel, I always like to turn back to the other panelists. And Cara and Massie, I wonder if you have any next thoughts or a question for each other based on what you've now all gotten to see what each other was looking to highlight. Massie, we'll go back to you. We haven't heard from you for 20 minutes now, so your turn again.
Some of these are actually resonate with what we've been doing at the JGI. We've had a few engagement webinars, so definitely some of the best practices that Cara highlighted, we've been mindful of as well in keeping, for example, the number of people that you have on the back end running the chat and the Q&A. I think we've actually turned off chat, for example, in some webinars, just because we're going to concentrate on one place. That's it. Just to keep that going. But also, yeah, just having the back end stuff, and also having people who can direct the questions to the right connectors and end. And for Amanda, the Matterport project is actually something we're looking into ourselves for tours of the IGB and the JGI. We just haven't had a chance to do it under these conditions, so, but hopefully soon.
Awesome.
All right. And Cara, did anything come up for you? Did you have a question or a comment to the others?
I'd be curious about how much effort you put into the podcasts, Massie. So how many people are involved with that, and how long does it take for you to produce one of the more heavy edited versions?
So it's Dan and Allison are really the primary point people for each one of those podcasts. For Dan, the interview, because it is fireside style, it's and he actually, has research work that he has to do. So he conducts the interview. There's minimal editing really on it. We send the audio away for full transcription. We have it vetted, and he can turn it around in about 2 weeks. With the Genome Insider podcast, that takes about a month to 6 weeks, because you not only have to do the interviews, but then you have to figure out what the story is and then write the script around it, run it by the researchers, get it vetted, and then, pick the music and all of that stuff. So because it does have all those extra steps built in compared to the fireside chat style, it does take a little bit longer. So I think Allison takes about, she's probably working on it about half time for about 4 to 6 weeks to get that one done.
I have a good question here that Susan had sent in based on the videos or the tours that Amanda was showing. I think it might apply to much of the content if each of you would address is just, do they have to go through CI review, and are there any concerns about sharing these kind of visuals to the, quote, outside world? I'll start with you, Amanda. Is there any type of vetting in terms of what people are going to see in the videos?
Yes, absolutely. We have an export control and cybersecurity groups that all of these tours, before we launch them publicly, have to go through review. And even if our photographer scans in the entire facility, there are ways to turn on and off various areas. So you will notice if you go to ornl.gov and you look through some of these tours, you may not be able to jump to every area. You may see that you just basically hit a wall or a door. There's a reason for that. It's not that we haven't scanned it. We probably have, but we do not allow that the public to see that. So yes, it all goes through multi-layered reviews before it goes out to public.
And Massie or Cara, would you have any of the same type of concerns?
Cara, I'll let you take
almost
this.
like legal filter?
Yeah. So for NSLS-II, we do ensure that whenever we do something live or film something, that we clean up the beamline beforehand. Since we run user operations, users are usually well-known scheduled so we can ensure that we pick times when users are done. So then none of their research is visible and only our instrumentation is there. And our instrumentation is taxpayer funded, and we're a DOE facility, so it's okay to see everything. So, but we still do these reviews and we go through. And the other thing why we do that, we want the places to look clean. I mean, just like every workspace, if you work on something, it not always looks perfect.
Yeah, it's scientists at work.
Yeah.
And for Berkeley Labs' 90th anniversary, JGI did a series of public virtual tours. They were about an hour long each. So we mixed, to Amanda and Cara's point about making it look real. I mean, we weren't able to cut to researchers on site and say, and here they are. But what we ended up doing instead was we combined slides and video to make you feel as if you were walking through the facility and saying, okay, here we are in the lobby, we're gonna go through the labs, and we're talking people through. Now we're going to take the elevator up, and some of that. And so that video is actually on our About Us location page on the JGI website. But it, like I said, it is a full hour, so you get the whole history and what we're doing. And I believe in that video we actually have a couple of one or two researchers who do join us. But again, it's not live in the sense that they're not in the building showing the actual machines at work. We just incorporated video to make that happen.
I have a question and a comment from Kristen. First, just complimenting a great conversation here regarding all the different tools. She wonders, when your teams are looking to resume in-person events and tours, etc., and what conversations you're having about the balance between those in-person activities, continuing to provide both dynamic in-person events as well as virtual tools, events, experiences in the future. I suppose it's almost a staffing and resource question of now that the online virtual versions of providing information and tours, it's not going to go away, but perhaps you haven't grown by twice your staff. So how are you going to balance and strategize around the in-person and virtual?
So I can start with that because the tour was speaking about the workshop that we had, where we had this tour with the little quiz in the middle. That was the virtual tour of a hybrid event. So it was a research conference that we were hosted that was hybrid. We had 20 researchers on site and another 40 online. It is a small research community, and yes, we picked that on purpose because we wanted to try hybrid with a little smaller audience and not with 200 people at once if something goes wrong. So what we did there, and that addresses the staffing thing, we had a in-person tour for the people who were on site, showing the same set of beamlines, and a virtual tour. And yes, we did 2 different tours on 2 different days. And yes, that is a staffing demand. But we had a lot of discussions about whether or not we want to do it in one tour. So having the person with the camera together with the tour guide and the other researchers that were in person. But we felt like that wasn't serving none of the 2 audiences, because if you're there, the camera person have to always stand in front. Otherwise, the virtual participants can't see. That means the in-person group has always a person with a camera in front of them. Well, the other way around, the virtual audience probably can't get their questions answered because there is an in-person audience who's much quicker in asking a question, because just raising a physical hand with a tour guide right in front of you will make you more noticeable than raising a virtual hand when someone like the camera person has to tell you, there's a question in the chat. Let me read that to you. So this is why we decided to split that off and have 2 different tours for the 2 different groups of people.
Very savvy awareness to these little nuances and the differences of communication interactions. All right, well, we actually are up to the time for our panel. We have another session coming on in just a few minutes. Please, I'm just going to say, join me, audience, in thanking the speakers. I know there's no way for them to directly interact with you, but imagine some applause happening, and definitely appreciate your time and all of these resources that you had described. you've given a lot of food for thought for others who are involved in science communication in particular to emulate some of the processes that you've gotten into. And thanks for sharing all these details. We'll look to connect our communications committee with some of these examples that you gave, and we'll see how we want to help share all of this around even more. Yes, and many thank yous coming in through the chat. So Massie and Cara and Amanda, thanks for your time today. Thanks everyone for being on this session. And the next one starts in about 10 minutes regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion in user facilities. So it'll be another fascinating 50-minute conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.